If you've ever felt like a narcissist has gotten to ride off into the sunset after leaving a trail of destruction, I get where you're coming from. But the truth is, there's no happily ever after for a narcissist. In fact, they have at least 5 major weaknesses that basically guarantee they'll never be happy. So the first weakness we're going to talk about today is a big one. It's the narcissist's lack of empathy. And I know some of you may believe that a lack of empathy could be a strength. Especially if you're highly empathetic, you understand how having empathy can sometimes make life more painful. But let's look at the lack of empathy this way. If you've gotten close to a narcissist, you probably don't envy their lives, do you? There may be some parts of their lives that you're envious of, but the part where they're always jumping from people to people and never really seem to find true happiness, that part's not so desirable, is it? And this right here is where we really see the benefits of having empathy shine through. And to be clear, there are different types of empathy, and we're talking about emotional empathy here. Emotional empathy, also known as affective empathy, helps you see things from another person's perspective, feel the same emotions, and ultimately build stronger relationships. So when someone tells you a tragic story and you feel even just a fraction of what they might be feeling, this is emotional empathy at work. And narcissists, they have some, but they don't have a lot, not at all. And this is exactly why you might find yourself grieving in front of a narcissist, for example, and they'll just act like your emotions are a major inconvenience to them. Have you been there? You might even see a look of disgust on their face. So in this scenario, it's clear to see how the narcissist's lack of empathy hurts you. But how does it hurt the narcissist? Well, how is this a weakness for them? Let's talk about it. So now think about a time when you've empathized with someone else. Not only does your empathy help the other person feel supported and cared for, but because of the experience, you feel a deeper bond with that person, don't you? There's a level of vulnerability and raw emotion that you shared in that moment, and your connection is deeper because of it. Narcissists don't get that, even when they're faking emotional empathy, which they do very often and very well. The other person may feel supported if they believe the act, but that's all there is. It's a one-way street and not a connection. And you might be thinking that you did feel a bond with a narcissist. And I know that that's true. But those bonds that we're talking about here are formed because this person has emotionally traumatized you in some way and then acted like they loved you. This behavior is called intermittent reinforcement, and it leads to what's called a trauma bond. And if you want more information on the trauma bond, I have a whole playlist that I'm going to link to in the card and the description. But essentially, a trauma bond is a very unhealthy connection, and it's an empty connection. So on the other hand, on the flip side, healthy connections come from those moments where we can be vulnerable with each other and feel safe in the process. A narcissist will never have this because they lack the ability to be vulnerable with themselves and with others. And here's a heartbreaking and incredibly relatable comment from one of you who has seen just how empty this connection can be. So I'm going to paraphrase just this first part, but essentially this commenter was dealing with a loss. And the comment goes on to say, a couple of weeks after that, my partner decided to pick a fight with me for not being present or romantic enough with him, to the point of saying, I always have excuses, and try to end it because I was distraught and grieving. And I think anyone who's been in a relationship with a narcissist for long enough can relate to this comment. There are going to be times when we can offer compassion to other people, and there are going to be times in our lives when we really just desperately need it ourselves. But you won't get it from a narcissist. They expect you to serve them no matter what, and your grief will only ever be an inconvenience to them. So my name is Christina, and my goal with this channel is to help you unpack those toxic relationships and unravel the trauma bonds that come as a result. So if those things have touched your life, consider subscribing because there's a whole lot of helpful content here for you, and I wouldn't want you to miss a thing. So now let's talk about another weakness that all narcissists have, and that is an extremely delicate ego. So narcissists may seem like they have it all together, confidence-wise, but very deep down, there's a lot of shame about who they are. You just don't always see it because their ego is overcompensating. And I know you've seen evidence of this. Any kind of criticism or failure rocks their world because it bumps up against that unstable core. Anything that threatens their delicate self-image gets attacked. And you can think of the attack like a knee-jerk reaction in an attempt to restabilize themselves. So now imagine you're dating a narcissist and you point out evidence of how truly selfish they've been. An example where they've hurt an innocent person to get their way. The narcissist's false persona tells them that they're completely justified for hurting this person and for their selfish behavior. After all, that other person deserved to be hurt. Because they're stupid or weak or whatever it is. But here's the thing. Your case was pretty compelling, and it hit a nerve. It awoke something that was buried deep within the narcissist. It awoke the truth that had long since been buried by that false self-image. So the narcissist gets a glimpse of their unprocessed shame, and it's painful. So they rage out. This is the knee-jerk reaction that helps them restabilize their false self-image. Through their rage, punishment, or revenge, they can make you the problem. And then they can go back to their own delusion. And when you look at their behavior objectively, it's very clear to see what's happening. If deep down they truly believed you were wrong, your words wouldn't bother them. But in order for them to restabilize that false self-image, they actually have to get to you, or at least believe they've gotten to you. This is that revenge part that makes the narcissist feel better. And this is also where a narcissist's propensity for delusion can really come in handy for them. They can sometimes convince themselves that they've gotten to you even if they haven't. But what makes this a true weakness for the narcissist is that they won't stop until they've won. And they're absolutely willing to hurt themselves as long as it means hurting you too. So naturally, this is a danger for those of you who are dealing with a vengeful narcissist right now. But you may be able to use it to your advantage. If there's no way they can really hurt you, just walk away and be happy. Let them become the architects of their own downfall. And here are two comments that came in, one right after another, but on different videos. So the first commenter said, the best revenge is them not having access to you anymore. And another said, living well is the best revenge. And there are so many comments like this in the comment section, and I am so glad to see that you guys get it. Trying to get revenge by hurting the narcissist only keeps you entangled with them for longer than you need to be. Preserve your peace, people. Now let's look at another weakness all narcissists have, a need for external validation. And they definitely don't advertise this one. In fact, if they see someone who seems to be attention hungry or codependent, you might notice some level of contempt that they have for this person. But the truth is that it's the narcissist who really needs that external validation, like the rest of us need food and water. So yes, we can file this one in that overflowing file of projection that we see from narcissists. But the reason why this one seems hidden is because you'll get that sense that they don't need you. In fact, they'll go to great lengths to communicate this message. They don't need you or anyone else, but that's simply not true. The truth may be that they don't need any one specific person, but they very much do need people to support that false self-image. It just doesn't matter to a narcissist who it is. So have you ever had a boss who said something like, everyone's replaceable? It doesn't mean that the boss can run the company on their own, even if they want you to believe that's true. It means that they have such little respect for people as individuals that they believe that they can easily replace anyone at a moment's notice. And that's how narcissists view everything. If you had a boss like that, they may very well have been a narcissist. But you also get that feeling in any other kind of relationship with a narcissist. Even if you're an only child of a narcissistic parent, you may get the feeling, albeit intermittently, that you just don't matter to them. And whatever they're getting from you, they can easily get from someone else. So remember the discussion about empathy we just had. A relationship with a narcissist is very much a one-way street. It is not a connection. So they're only ever looking at what you can do for them. There's no true reciprocity, and that's not even part of the equation when they're thinking about ending a relationship. They're just instantly on to the next. And I know most of you have seen this firsthand. It happens at a breakneck speed that's difficult to understand, much less process. And here's a comment from one of you who has seen this firsthand. I'm a senior, but the woman he left me for was 12 years my senior. He left her around the 7-month expiration date. He has a 7-month turnaround with each supply. I know how she feels. And this commenter is so right about the expiration date with a narcissist. It's different for everyone, but once you've gone a few rounds, and by rounds I mean cycles of narcissistic abuse, you start to get a feel for how long they can last. It's often going to be quicker after you've been through a few cycles, but there is definitely an expiration date in any relationship with a narcissist. And here's another weakness that set narcissists up for failure. They expect other people to perform at totally unrealistic levels. We're talking rigid standards that make no room for flaws or humanity. In romantic relationships especially, they idealize new partners, putting them on sky-high pedestals during that honeymoon phase. And they show up as a version of themselves that doesn't actually exist. We're talking about a flattering, maybe even selfless version that will go to great lengths to make you happy. And in return, they expect nothing short of perfection, which is never sustainable for anyone, especially since that love-bombing version of the narcissist isn't sustainable either. Yet they will absolutely give themselves a pass on letting it go, maybe even blaming you for their change in behavior. And this change in behavior really signals the move from the love bombing phase to the devaluation phase, which eventually moves on to the discard. And this is where you start getting glimpses of their true colors. If you think you've been through these phases, I have a free checklist available in the description box that can help you sort through the experience. So definitely check that out. So narcissists, or really anyone who expects perfection from their partners, really is just guaranteeing disappointment for everyone. But of course, we know nothing can be the narcissist's fault, so they blame you. It has to be you that's not good enough for them. And it has to be you that misrepresented yourself, even though they showed up as a version of themselves that didn't even exist. So eventually, even the most patient and understanding partners end up struggling under the weight of these impossible standards. I mean, really, when you look at it, it's unfair. You can never be enough for a narcissist, and you can never make a narcissist happy because they don't have that true happiness within. So right off the bat, you're fighting an impossible battle. And we often talk about the hamster wheel of being with a narcissist and trying to please a narcissist, trying to be good enough, trying to make the relationship work. But the narcissist has a hamster wheel of their own, and that is their relentless search for new supply. But because no one is actually perfect and no one can be good enough for the narcissist, that dysfunctional pattern is just going to repeat over and over again. So remember when I asked you if you envied the narcissist's life? This right here, it's a good reason why you shouldn't. And here's a comment from one of you who definitely has experience with these double standards. They lie at the drop of a hat, as they say. And God forbid you ever lie to them, regardless of the reason. What's okay for them is not okay for you, as far as they're concerned. And another commenter says, weird that they're sensitive to criticism, but yet they criticize everyone around them. And another weakness all narcissists have is they secretly fear rejection and abandonment, which is why they keep even close relationships from getting too close. They'd rather control the connections on their terms than risk being left, because if someone dares to leave the narcissist first, it will cause a major narcissistic injury. They'll be forced to peek behind their own curtain and face the truth about who they are. See, deep down in this basement of buried shame and insecurity, narcissists carry core wounds around not being good enough. So they self-protect by refusing to need anyone, not anyone specific anyway. Because if everyone is disposable, specific relationships don't matter so much. When that false self remains intact, there's no pain in walking away. So that Beyonce song is kind of like a narcissist's anthem. I'll have another you in a minute. Because again, to a narcissist, everyone is replaceable. So now that we've gotten this far down the list, I hope you're seeing why this one is a true weakness. Yes, it's easy to see how it hurts other people, how this behavior hurts you. But this fear of rejection only breeds more isolation for the narcissist. They're flat out refusing any real and true intimacy. And so they guarantee those superficial bonds that they're always trying to get away from. This one is a defense mechanism that backfires. Pushing people away before feeling abandoned directly fuels more disconnection. It's a vicious, self-fulfilling prophecy. And of course, narcissists aren't the only ones who do this, but it definitely is one of their main weaknesses. And sometimes you will find that the narcissist seemingly rides off into the sunset with someone else and never returns. Others of you will deal with the hoovering narcissist, who bounces from supply to supply and ends up coming back to you. Neither is a good scenario. And whatever the narcissist chooses to do has nothing to do with your value. But here's a comment from one of you who has dealt with the hoovering narcissist, who always needs to brutally end things before they come back around again. Do not fall for their hoover. It's just their tricky way to suck you back into their ongoing cycle of abuse. The first time I got hoovered was after 2 months of a silent treatment. The second discard I did recognize, for it was very cruel. After 8 months of no contact, he tried to hoover me again, but now I am luckily aware. So there are a lot of things that I've personally learned from this experience, but one thing is for certain: never give someone a second chance to see your value. If they don't see it the first time or even the third time, they're not going to. And honestly, that's okay, because other people will. And whether there's a hoover or not, or even whether they keep you around for appearances and end up living a double life, which is something that happens, you're always going to get the sense that the narcissist hates you. That feeling may come and go between cycles of abuse, but you never really shake it. And if you're wondering why that is, watch the video that just popped up on the screen. And before you go, be sure to hit that like button if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.